another set of people that are afraid of God or have been convicted by God and have not responded, and so they push Christianity and the things of God away as far as they can, and they would love to overcome Christians just to be able to, kind of put them in their place, as they would say. So we are out there as sheep among wolves, and yet Jesus also said that we are to be as innocent as doves, yes, but also as wise as serpents. So we need to be able to have that wisdom that He gives us to be able to tell the difference. We have the love that He gives us to be able to love them even though they may be wolves. And we do not have a spirit of fear, but a spirit of power to overcome with courage those who would be against us. And please note also the spirit that He has given us, this spirit that I keep talking about, the spirit of power and of love and a sound mind, is the Holy Spirit. It is His Holy Spirit. That means that that spirit of power that we talk about, that is the all-powerful God in the form of the Holy Spirit. That is omnipotent God Himself, all-powerful God Himself in the form of the Holy Spirit is that power. The spirit of love is again God. What do we say when we define God? God is love, we say. So when He comes into us, when He gives us His Holy Spirit, He is love personified in us. And then He has given Himself to us in the Holy Spirit, the spirit of sound mind that we talk about. That is the Spirit of God who is truth. In John 14, what did Jesus say? I am the way, the truth, and the life. There's a great example that I love to use. My youth are so used to this, they're almost sick of it. From experiencing God, if any of you have ever been through that, Henry Blackaby talks about truth being a person, the person of Jesus Christ. And he uses the example of when the boat was being tossed on the waves, and the disciples were all in a panic. And he said, but truth was asleep in the back of the boat. Okay? They were in a panic because they didn't know the truth. They thought the waves were strong enough to overcome them. They thought they were going to be overcome because they didn't know the truth. And truth was asleep in the back of the boat. And I use that all the time now. Truth is asleep in the back of the boat. Because God is truth. So when we talk about having a spirit of power and a spirit of love and a spirit of a sound mind, that is the Holy Spirit. Omnipotent God Himself in the form of the Holy Spirit, God who is love and Jesus who is truth, dwelling in us. So God has given us this spirit of power, love, and a sound mind. He's given us Himself in the form of the Holy Spirit to be all these things for us and to take away from us any need for fear. We have no motivation to be afraid. But God has given us more than that. He's also given us, as we live along, a salvation and a calling. Not just a calling, a holy calling. If you look down in verse 9, as we look at that again. I'm terribly sorry. Verse 9, who has saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to His own purpose and grace. Well, first of all, let me say that notice how that verse starts. Who has saved us. There's that salvation again. Only God has the power to save us. Again, that verse in John chapter 14. Jesus said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. No one comes to the Father except through me. That is the only way that we can come. God's power is the only power that is strong enough to save us. You cannot do enough good things to earn your way into heaven. You can be the best person ever. You can be so much better than everyone else around you that you can't even compare. And yet, that's not good enough to get into heaven. One of the examples that I thought of, as I was working on this, there's a here's where I'll be in trouble. I'll tell the whole story in just the short part of it. A mini-series that I saw chronicling the works of some men. One of the men, as they were saying at the end, went back, it says in the mini-series, went back to civilian life. Obviously this was a war-based thing. Went back to civilian life and it said became a handyman. And he said, and as a testament to his character, over 1,600 people showed up at his funeral. Now, I've preached a bunch of funerals in my time. And I can't think of any funeral that I've done that's probably the biggest one I ever have done was maybe 150, maybe 200. I mean, 1,600 people. Here was a man of character. This was obviously, this person obviously had made a tremendous impact on his community, had done many good things, had earned the respect of everyone in his community. And yet, that in and of itself was not enough. The only strength that we have that can get us into heaven, that can save us from our own sins, is God's power. So verse 9 begins, who has saved us. That's God's power, and only God's power is enough to save. And then as we move on, the reason that he calls us, who has saved us and called us with a holy calling, not according to our works, but according to his own purpose and grace. The reason that God calls us is for his purpose and through his grace. That's why he calls it. It doesn't have anything to do with our goodness or our good works. I've been tortured this morning because of my voice. I haven't been able to sing. I love to sing. I've been singing my whole life. And the first jobs that I ever had when I was a teenager, I was on stage. So I love to sing. I love the songs that you picked this morning, and yet I couldn't sing. I'm going to stand over there trying to be quiet. But how ridiculous for me to come before the Lord and go, Lord, look at this talent that I have for singing. I'd be glad to use it for you. Okay? It's not my purpose for which I'm saved. It's not my gifts that I can give to God. It's his purpose. Why has he called each one of us? It's got nothing to do with our own good works, but it's got to do with his purpose. I have that written in the margin of my Bible. He doesn't call us because we're good or because of the good things we did, but according to his own purpose and his grace. That's why he calls us. Now, I don't understand why he calls some people. I don't understand why he called me. I wouldn't have called me. In the dim, dark recesses of my heart that I've not shared with anybody, I know who I am and don't consider myself worthy to be in the ministry. Don't consider myself worthy to be in the kingdom. And none of us are worthy to be in the kingdom. But in the dim, dark recesses of your heart, you have those same places that we wonder, how in the world could God use someone like me? And in fact, I often say that I think that's the whole purpose he chose me is, if anything good happens, it has to have been from God because because I don't have that much to offer. So it gives him more glory. It's like the example I used in the first. What was the example I used in the first service? The loaves and the fishes when Jesus fed the 5,000. If everybody had brought a sack lunch, then the miracle wouldn't have been much. It was the fact that he had so little to work with and yet fed so many that made it a miracle. And that's kind of the way I look at it sometimes. It's the fact that he has so little to work with that if anything good comes out of it, it has to be from him. So I acknowledge that his ways are higher than our ways, and I simply try to be obedient, and that's what you're called to do as well. Acknowledge that his ways are higher than your ways, and you try to do what God has called you to do. And don't feel like you're alone in being, in thinking that you're bad or that you've done bad or something like that. We talk about the roll call of faith in the book of Hebrews, and you can take that same list of people and you can make that a roll call of shame if you want to. You've got Abraham who lied through his teeth about who his wife. Oh no, this is my sister. No, this is your wife. You've got Moses, who, yes, led the people from the promised land. Moses was also a murderer. You've got King David. David, a man after God's own heart. David was an adulterer and a murderer. Solomon asked for wisdom, and then he got it, and then he didn't use it. So you can look at every one of the characters in the Bible like that, and you can see where they had their mistakes too, where they had the dim, dark recesses of their heart as well. And yet, God is able, through his grace, for his purposes, to save them, to save me, to save you, and to call each one of us into his calling for us. And that's really kind of the next thing, is to consider the awesomeness of his calling. How cool is that? Did you know that God has a specific purpose, plan, call on your life? God has something just for you that nobody else can do, that he wants you to accomplish. And you're the only one that can do it. And yours is different than mine. Yours is different than the person sitting next to you. Yours is different than everybody else's here. I don't know what yours is. But God has called you, and it's as individual as your fingerprint, what it is that God has called you to do. And nobody else can do it for you. I can't do it for somebody else. Another example that I use is there's a gal at our church who is just a wonderful person. She's just as sweet as can be. She works really, really hard. We know we can always count on her. If there's